Hey, what's up, leaders? Super excited for this interview. I had a great conversation with Dr. Doug Carpenter. He is an author, a counselor, and one of my friends, and you are really going to enjoy our talk about addiction. Stay tuned. Hey guys, I'm so excited to be here with Dr. Doug Carpenter. Does anybody call you Douglas?
Yes, some people do.
So this is Dr. Carpenter. He is one of the most genuine people I'll ever meet. And what I mean by that is if you want to know what he's thinking or feeling, just ask him because he will tell you. So Dr. Carpenter, we're going to talk about, I think, a really important aspect to the world probably, but specifically men who are trying to become fathers, leaders, and husbands, that demographic that I personally am in. We're talking about addiction. So if you could maybe just tell the guys who you are for those that don't know you, and we'll get going.
Okay, so as Danny said, my name is Dr. Doug Carpenter. I have a master's degree in addictions, so in behavioral and chemical addictions, and then I have a doctorate in clinical psych. I've been a licensed psychologist since 1998, so I've been working in the field. I taught college for 13 years, 8 years of graduate work, 5 years of undergraduate teaching, was a dean. And the whole time I also had a private practice on the side. I've seen patients since 1998. So, and now I have a full-time practice with my wife, and there's 16 therapists at Insight Counseling Services.
Have you ever broken down and tried to figure out how many individuals you've seen over your career? Have you ever done the math?
I had to testify in court a couple of weeks ago, and I did get asked in the last 5 years, how many patients have you seen? And I had been prepared by the lawyer that might be a potential question, and it had come out to over 3,000.
Wow.
Just in 5 years.
I've tried to do that with the number of runs I've been on, and I think I'm at roughly 10 to 12,000 or something.
Yeah.
Over that's 20 years. And when I say that number out loud, I'm like, that's a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah.
So, just in the past few years, you've talked to 5,000 people roughly. How many demographically would you say are men versus women, do you think?
I mostly deal with men.
Okay.
So I would say 75% of what I've seen is men, especially in the last, since probably 2006, I have mostly seen men. I only see a small percentage of women.
Gotcha. And out of those men, is addiction one of the main, is that your kind of what you're known for?
Well, it is for me because I have a master's in addictions, which is really rare. So, and there are two types there's two areas of addictions. There's behavioral addictions, and those are like gambling, eating, sexual addiction. Those are called behavioral addictions, or now what they're calling process addictions. You might hear that word, you'll see it in the literature, and you may hear it if you're listening to a podcast or something about addiction, they'll talk about process addiction because usually there's kind of a process involved in that type of addiction, and it usually starts small and it continues to escalate. And then there's the chemical side of it, which is drugs, alcohol, caffeine, tobacco, things that are chemically affect us and cause us to be addicted.
Now, and do you deal with both? Or are you more process or behavioral? Or
I do deal with both. My preference, I don't know if I really have too much of a preference. I do a lot of sexual addiction, a lot of sexual deviance, a lot of sexual dysfunction. I got into that when I was in my doctoral program. I went to work at a jail, and none of the other psychologists wanted to see the sexual offenders there. So
I can imagine.
Yeah, with me having a background of addictions, they all kind of fell on my caseload. And so that's kind of how I got more into the process or behavioral addiction side of this and more away from the chemical dependency. But there's statistics that show that probably if you're a counselor, there's a good chance that more than 50% of your caseload when they come through for their problem are likely to have some kind of chemical addiction.
What do you think guys struggle with the most, or can you put it into a category? Men generally struggle with this. Is there, do you know the breakdown of what guys are struggling with from an addiction standpoint?
Definitely. I would say alcohol and pornography
Gotcha.
are probably the two big. So one from each category, definitely alcohol. A lot of men don't recognize either how much they drink or how their drinking affects them or the people around them. And then, I mean, pornography is a huge issue, especially since the internet became so popular.
Oh, for
And
sure.
pornography is a huge issue among men. I mean, even the last statistic that I think Covenant Eyes put out is even 35% of pastors, more than 50% of Christian men struggle with addiction.
Wow.
And if we look at the general population, there's probably at least 10 to 12% of people who are addicted to pornography, like in a serious way.
Do you think it's because it's just so easy to access? It's just that, it's at your fingertips. Is that the
Oh,
reason?
absolutely. And the problem is that it's starting so young, because the average age that a kid is exposed to a pornographic image online is 11.
Wow.
But there are some recent statistics that are coming out that are showing that is actually gravitating toward 9 years old.
Wow.
So right now it's still kind of officially 11 years old, but like I said, it's moving toward 9. So kids, young boys, are exposed to these pornographic image long before they're mentally ready to see, or their body's ready to process those kinds of feelings. And there's other research that shows that anytime an individual starts an addictive behavior or a chemical before the age of 14, there's a very high percentage and propensity that they will have a lifelong struggle with that issue.
So as like fathers, that's something that we need to be hyper aware of.
Oh, huge. I would really recommend that parents have a lot of safety measures, parental controls on phones, iPads, iPods, any electronic device that your kid's going to be on. I would suggest that you have some kind of screening, filtering device, because if your kid does start this before the age of 14, it's very possible they're going to have a lifelong struggle with whatever it is that they start.
Hardwired. It just sets so firm in that time of their life.
Yeah, well, your brain has neural pathways in them, and they're created by synapses in your different neurons. So your brain creates a pathway. So like, think about when you started to learn how to throw a football or play an instrument. The more times you did it, the easier it got. And that's because your brain starts creating a neural pathway for that behavior to where it just flows freely, and it happens somewhat automatically. So pornography, all these addictions do the same thing, especially if you start so young, where the young mind is still so pliable. These synapses and stuff are so pliable to create those neural pathways.
Yeah. So I guess maybe we can, obviously alcoholism, pornography is serious, but let's maybe take it back a little bit. Let's say that I've got a chemical addiction to coffee.
Okay.
I would say probably most of people in the world.
I would say I do.
And you decide you don't want to do something, but I don't need a professional. I don't need to go, Dr. Carpenter, I need a session here. I got to get rid of coffee. What are the steps that somebody could take to overcome what would you call the addiction to coffee? Non-dangerous? Like, is there a category for that?
Well, no, because it can become dangerous, because if you consume more than 450 milligrams of caffeine in a day, that's considered in the risk zone.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, basically, if you drink 2 large Starbucks coffees in a day, you've reached that limit, probably exceeded it. And so, anytime you're having like monster drinks or something like that where there's a lot of caffeine, you are coming close to running over that 450 milligrams. So I think anything done to an excess can be problematic. The one way that I think you can tell if something's a problem for you is, and I do this with people who want to come in and just learn how to control their drinking. They don't believe they're an alcoholic. I'll say, okay, well, let's do this. Let's come up with, how many times this week do you want to drink? Okay, 3. Okay, at each one of those times, what's your limit on drinking? Okay, 2 drinks. Okay, so you're allowed to drink 3 days, whatever 3 days you want, 2 drinks apiece. Come in next week and tell me how you did.
Gotcha.
So if you come in next week and you drink, well, I drank 5 times, and 3 of those I drank more than 6 beers. Well, you couldn't stick to your own standards. So that's telling me that there's something driving that behavior. So if you want to see if any problem is reaching the level of addiction for you,
Right.
set your own limits and see if you can stick to them. If you can, you're probably okay. If you can't, that's verging on you need to recognize that you probably have a problem here and need to start making some changes and some
Gotcha.
improvising somehow.
Gotcha. That makes sense. How would you suggest somebody, let's say I want to just stop, me personally, after we talked about this before we started, I feel like after I eat, I need to have something sweet in order to feel done. And I know having excess refined sugars is not good.
Right.
I probably am addicted. Like I just really like, my day doesn't feel like it's done unless I've had something sweet. How do I overcome that? What are some easy, or maybe not easy, but what are some things that I could do to, other than just is it just pure willpower at that point? Just saying, no, I'm going to stop.
Well, it can be if you're strong enough to do that. Another thing you can do is substitution. So you might substitute that with a piece of fruit,
right.
Which is more of a natural
right.
type sugar, sweet taste. And see if you can get by with that. You can use mental distraction. Okay, as soon as I'm done eating my meal, I'm going to immediately go outside and play catch with my kid or something. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to
break the sequence kind of.
Yes. In when you, like, if somebody joins any self-help group, especially like AA, they have a slogan that says, in order to change a behavior, you have to change people, places, and things.
Gotcha.
So if you're trying to change a behavior of yours, I would suggest that you try to change people, places, and things. What's in those categories that you can change to help you to try to do something different?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's say it's not sweets. It's something worse. We'll use pornography because that's the big one for guys.
Okay.
Is that always a problem? Like, is it, like you said, if you could stop, would you say a guy should ever be looking at porn? I mean, that.
Well, from a Christian standpoint, I would say, of course not. We shouldn't be looking at porn.
Right.
I get this question a lot from adolescents, like, is masturbation wrong?
Right.
Well, I guess if you ask me from a clinical and physical standpoint, I say no, it's not. But then, kids feel guilty or they ask, how much is too much?
Right.
And my answer to that, and really any addiction, are you controlling it or is it controlling you?
Right.
And that's another big indicator if you have a problem. If you feel like this behavior is controlling you, so let's say you've got somebody that is a guy who looks at pornography maybe twice a month. Right. Is that an addiction? Probably not, unless they're spending like an inordinate amount of hours
would be.
If they stayed up all night doing that on those 2 nights, you're binging at that point. You're over consuming when you use. But if you use it twice a month, let's say, and it's not really interfering in your social, familial, occupational, any level of your functioning, no, that's probably not a problem if you feel like you're controlling it.
Right.
But if you feel like it's controlling you and you feel like you can't go without it, or you just, when you get the urge to do one of these behaviors, it's so strong that you just can't hardly keep yourself from doing it, or you find yourself becoming really irritable or angry, or, that's your body reacting chemically to a behavioral addiction.
Gotcha.
There are studies that show behavioral addictions, especially sexual addictions and pornography addiction, is 6 times stronger than, for example, cocaine addiction.
Gotcha.
And the reason for that is your body is becoming addicted to its own chemicals.
Right.
So when you engage in a behavioral addiction, there's a place in your brain called your limbic system. It's your emotional brain that contains your reward system. And so there's a lot of dopamine, there's a lot of chemicals released in that part of the brain when you're doing something that you really, really like.
Right.
And so it's going to keep dumping that in your head, telling you, hey, I want more of that. That was fun. I like that. That tasted good. Like if you like chocolate cake, that if you, whatever your thing is, your brain's going to tell you, I want more and more and more of that. And then that's where it starts to be where the issue is controlling you versus you controlling it.
So would you say if a guy struggling with pornography says, I can't control it, at that moment, I need professional help? Like if
Absolutely.
that's like
Absolutely.
that would be the tipping point for you if you were giving some advice. Hey, should I
Yeah.
come and see you? I feel like I can't stop. Go get
Yes. If you
professional
feel like
help.
you can't stop, if it is starting to replace um, sexual intimacy with your spouse, if it's starting to actually interfere with your life, if you find that you're staying up way too late and then you're tired all the next day, from staying up watching pornography, all those are indicators that it's interfering with some level of functioning. And
Gotcha.
yeah, it's starting to control you. And at that point, you need professional help. But I think there are things that all guys can do to protect against that.
Mm-hmm.
There are all types of filters, like I mentioned with the youth.
Right.
There's filters that you can use. There's parental settings you can use. You and a friend can get together and password protect each other's phones
Right.
against, getting to adult content.
Right.
Like I have several guys who come to me and say, you know what, I want you to set my phone to where I can't access porn. And I just write the code number down that I use and I
Right.
keep it with a log by their name.
Right.
And, that prevents them from getting to it. It's funny when they call me and like, I'm turning in my phone, I need that code. I'm getting ready to buy a new phone. So.
Yeah, sure you are.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I have to go to the Verizon store with you. Um, But a lot of guys will do that, and guys will do that for each other. So you can lock yourself out of adult content sites. You can also find an accountability partner.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of commitment on each other's part. Like that would be me having a commitment to call you, Danny, and say, hey, how are you doing this week? Have you looked at porn? Are
Right.
you struggling? Where's your thought life at?
Right.
How many times have you looked at porn?
Right.
Whatever the behavior
Right.
is,
Right.
having an accountability partner is very important.
And are these the kind of things that if somebody decided they needed professional help, you would start to implement, or what is the process? I think some guys could realize I have a problem, but
Right.
I don't want to go talk to a shrink. Like I don't know what they're going to tell me I'm a terrible person, or, they don't know like I've never talked to a counselor. What does that
Sure.
look like? What is the process of
Yeah.
actually getting help?
Well, if somebody came in and they had that kind of addiction, I mean, so it's kind of the process is the same. First of all, I have people draw, and I brought a piece of paper here so I could kind of do this. I have them draw a big circle. If I can turn the pen on here, I have them draw a big circle. And then I ask them, okay, on this side is pain, on this side is gain. I want you to make a pie chart for me about how much pain is this behavior causing you and how much are you getting out of it.
Right.
Okay, so I had a guy do this the other day in relation to alcohol. And so he said, that's how much gain I'm getting out of alcohol. And this is how much pain I'm using. I know as a counselor, this person is ready for change.
Right.
Because the pain is outweighing the gain.
Gotcha.
Now, I get tons of teenagers who come in and they're smoking pot, and I do this, and they are like the exact opposite.
Right.
Yeah, there's that much pain and that much gain.
Right.
I'm not going to get anywhere with that person.
Right.
So the first thing is when you come to treatment, you have to know, are you ready to make a change?
Right.
And if you can draw this chart and the pain outweighs the gain, that tells you and it tells me that you are ready for change and you can make a change. You're motivated to make a change. So at that point, I would ask you to find an accountability partner, to try to put some controls on whatever the behavior is. And that could be like food,
Right.
alcohol, sex, anything. Try to put some kind of controls or stop gaps on that, or go to the grocery store and stop buying sweets.
Right.
Whatever it is you have to do. A lot of times I will send people to a men's group of some kind or a self-help group that adds to accountability. It gives people a place to talk about their struggle.
Right.
Also, I think working the 12 steps is very effective in learning to control an addiction. I might also see if there's some kind of underlying reason for your addiction, like is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is your addiction really a symptom of some other problem that you're not addressing? So that's important to find out.
Right.
There was something else there I was going to say.
Well,
Oh, the other thing I would do is I would just try to get at the underlying reason. Like, are you turning to pornography because your marriage is a train wreck and you guys haven't had sex in 8 months and
right.
you don't talk and you don't like each other and all you're doing is fighting? Well, your pornography, the use is probably a symptom of your marriage.
Right.
So you really need to be in marital therapy, trying to work on the intimacy and rebuilding the intimacy in your relationship. And once you have that,
Right.
it's possible that your pornography use would decrease.
You know, I'm obviously not in the same position as you, but I did some personal training, which you were involved with, and that I could see when I would talk to people who were, let's say, 50 or 60 plus pounds overweight, they usually had something that happened, you know, a bad relationship, and
Right.
that was like the moment, and you could see it spiral, and until they kind of figured that out, they would do this on the weight scale. Like that seemed
Right.
It was almost, you can almost
Right.
predict, you know, you see someone 100 pounds overweight and you can think, I bet they had an issue in their life at some point that they couldn't figure out. And
Right.
then
So once I try to help people set up some behavioral stop gaps,
yeah,
I start trying to help them figure out the why.
right.
Like, why am I engaging in this behavior? I mean, I think we all know why we're addicted to caffeine. It gets us going in the morning.
Yeah.
We live a very fast-paced life. We need that caffeine to keep us going. So that's kind of explainable. But if you're to the point where you're allowing some other addiction to control you, let's say like somebody even like likes to read a book, like that's something that can get away from me. Like I can read really quick. I can read a whole book in a matter of a couple of days. And if I get a hold of a really good book, like I've read a 750-page book in like 2.5 days. You know, like to me that's kind of an addiction because I stopped my entire life to read that book.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So even something as simple like that, if it's interfering with your life,
And
can be considered an addictive behavior.
yeah, I could see that in like my life. I will, in different periods, I'd say fitness, man, that high of going to work out and when you get done feeling so good, which is definitely healthy physically. But if I'm spending 6 days a week and I'm leaving my family to go do a 3-hour workout, I think we really got to, because it's easy to go, well, this is healthy. I'm just being healthy. But
well, and
as a whole,
exercise, the way our brain responds to exercise is very similar to how the way it responds to sex. Anything else that you really enjoy doing, that limbic system, you're still going to get that rush. I mean, they talk about runner's high.
right.
Well, that's all that is. You're getting to a point where your brain is so saturated with dopamine that it's like you've just been given a shot of drugs.
Yeah.
You know, so even healthy things can reach the point of not being healthy for you or interfering with your life to where it's a problem. It's a problem for you. You know, if you're out running 3 to 4 hours, you know, every Saturday and you leave your wife and, you know, that causes marital problems, that's probably a problem for you.
Yeah. One of the things we did with the guys at the start of this challenge is we made up this a circle, and it had different segments: relationship, like wife, spouse, network, financial, spiritual, mental. And our goal at the end of this 30 days is just to make it a little more circular instead of, you know, like if you were doing really great financially because you're killing it and working 80 hours a week, well, maybe you need to make a little less money and you were 50 pounds overweight, you should lose some weight. Like, you know, like to have that balance, I think is super important. And then you don't get something that's so far out of whack.
Well, and I think for men is one thing that they need to keep in balance is their social network. Men are not good about making friends, and we're not really good about being honest with each other. Like, you know, I think there's so much shame involved in something that you feel like you're addicted to because you think that as a man, that implies weakness.
Yeah.
Or
you should be able to just fix it. Just stop.
Or we should be able to fix it or stop. You know, if I should be able to come and tell you as my friend, hey, I'm having a hard time with pornography. I need you to be accountable. I need to be accountable to you. Will you help me with this? I mean, most of the time, if you did that with a friend, they're going to tell you, sure, I would totally help you with this. But more than likely, you're going to hear, yeah, I have a problem with that sometimes too.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it would be good for us to be accountable to each other. But,
Do you have any ways to help guys that maybe were really resistant to like getting into a community, other than just saying, just go do it? Because I like one of my greatest benefits of my job is we call each other brothers. Like I work with guys and they're really close and we spend a significant amount of time, and that has been super valuable for me to have. There's a strong group of guys that they'll literally go into burning buildings with me, but because we have that, you can talk about anything. You want to talk, absolutely anything. And that is, if I can impress to anybody that's watching this, if you can find, even if it's just one person that you could just say anything to and not feel bad, that is so important. Like the idea of the lone wolf is stupid. You know, it's not.
There's a lot of research that if you're trying to deal with an addiction and you're trying to do it lone wolf, or what we call white knuckling it by yourself, the research shows that you're more than likely not going to be successful. You're going to continue to go through cycles of relapsing.
Right, because you said it change people, places, and
things.
And
yeah. If men don't feel like they have anybody in their life, or they're too embarrassed or whatever, I mean, the internet's a great thing right now, especially with COVID going on. You can find a men's group pretty much on any topic in a Zoom meeting, you know, just like we're doing right now. I know, like, I go to a men's Zoom meeting that I belong to, because a lot of the men's meetings around here, I've probably had one or two people in the group as my patients, you know, so it's really hard for me to walk in anywhere and not either be recognized or make somebody feel uncomfortable because they know me or they've seen me. So like I go to a men's group online, you know, and I've developed some really close friendships, although I've never met these guys in person, but still it's a place where I can go and talk and be honest and truthful and real. And I think every man needs that. You know, no man is an island. We've heard that. No man is an island, you know, and man wasn't made to interact alone. That's why God created Eve. You know, we are made for community.
Yeah, I know most of the guys I think all the guys that are in this challenge are married. How do you see using your wife as that asset? Maybe, you know, like something like pornography could be hard just because of the sexual nature of it. But, you know, how do you see, are guys
and women are very different.
Yeah. Are guys more successful when they can include their spouse in like the recovery or the help, or is that sometimes they need to get over it and then ask for help?
Well, there's a difference including your spouse in your recovery plan and using your spouse as your accountability partner. Gotcha. We never recommend using your spouse as your accountability partner. Okay. That needs to be like another guy that you can be real with. You can be, you know, on an equal playing field. You know, in relationships like that, like if it, like, let's say pornography, or if your wife gets really upset about your alcohol use or whatever, she's too emotionally involved to be your accountability partner. You want to find ways to have her support you in this journey and be encouraging, but she's not the person that you need to answer to. Your accountability partner needs to be more of a neutral person who's not emotionally involved with you. You know, you don't want your accountability to partner when you call them and say, hey, I slipped and I did this bad thing. You don't want them like screaming and yelling and crying at you. Why did you do this to me? Blah, blah, blah. You want them to be supportive and say, okay, dude, what do you need to do to pick yourself up? You know, have you prayed? Have you asked for forgiveness? What do you need to do next, and help you get focused versus having an emotional encounter with you, a negative emotional encounter. That needs to be a positive emotional encounter.
Gotcha. Cool. So kind of what I hear you saying is, whatever the issue is, if you don't have control over it and you feel like it's controlling you, that's the time for professional care.
Yes. And if it's interfering with some level of your functioning.
And when you do get professional care, you need to think about creating a community or a person or a group of persons to help you manage that, because you're probably not going to do it completely on your own, whether that's, you know, your pastor, your counselor, your Is there any other steps that would
Well,
be?
and I don't even necessarily, I mean, people may differ on this, and it may depend on what the topic is. You might not want to choose your pastor as your accountability partner either, because if that's going to instill a sense of shame in you, you know, that might not be the right person for you either. I mean, it may be like, you know, I need to commit to reading the Bible every day.
Right.
You know, maybe that or something,
for
but
sure.
you know, most guys don't want to go confide and then be accountable to their pastor if that's going to breed more shame in them.
No, that makes sense.
I think it probably depends on the personality of the pastor.
Right. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Awesome. With addiction, would you say, because we also, you know, I think maybe we're not struggling with something, but we want to improve ourselves. Because I think sometimes, like when we go to a doctor just gets us not sick. How do you, what can guys do to improve themselves, maybe create healthy habits that maybe they could learn from addictions? Like there's some things you should do in life that are beneficial. I guess is a habit and addiction just two sides of the same coin? One is beneficial and one is not. How can guys develop good habits?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the term addiction has more of a negative connotation, where a habit is more something that you almost do unconsciously.
Okay.
That it's become so much of your ingrained personality or your ingrained daily routine. It's like brushing your teeth. Hopefully we all have a habit of brushing our teeth. We almost don't even have to think about that anymore. It's just part of our normal morning routine. But it's not impairing us, it's helping us.
Gotcha.
Right. So, I mean, there are differences between habits and hang-ups. You know, or addiction. So yeah, habits are more healthy. There's some research shows that in order for anything to become a consistent pattern in your life, you usually need to do it for more than 21 days in a row.
Gotcha.
So, like for example, I've really wanted recently to get on a more regular pattern of having a morning devotional time.
Gotcha.
And so somebody introduced me to the YouVersion app. It's a Bible app.
Yeah, I've got that.
And they have gazillions, I mean, just tons of devotionals on like a million different topics that you can choose in there. Mm-hmm. And so they have them like 3-day ones, they have 10-day ones, they have 40-day ones. So I recently did like a 40-day one, you know, about love and sex and just kind of all these topics. And so I've done that for the last 40 days. And it's about a 10-minute devotion. You sit down, you read a little blurb of a devotional, then you read a set of scriptures, then you write about it a little bit. And that's a good habit to get into, because, you know, my schedule was so hectic that I didn't have a daily Bible reading time. It was very sporadic. I would go through periods where I would do it, then not do it, then do it, then not do it. And so I wanted to become more consistent with doing it. But I needed something that wasn't long and drawn out. You know, so I found this and I've tried to make a habit of it now. And, you know, I've done it for about actually like 43 days in a row now.
Awesome. That's awesome.
You know, so it's
maybe
just
making something easy, making it easy.
Yeah, making it easy. You know, I may only read 10 to 15 scriptures in that devotional. But I'm still feeding myself the word of God. I'm still feeding myself something positive that I can think on throughout the day. So it's consistency. It's staying with it, being disciplined to stay with it until it becomes just such an automatic habit.
Yeah, when you because I you open your phone, you just start reading. That's just what happens.
Yeah, well, I have a habit for breakfast. I make 2 eggs and 2 pieces of bacon every morning. That's pretty much what I eat for breakfast. So now I have to do my devotional for 10 minutes before I can go make my eggs.
Gotcha.
You know, and so it's now become just part of my morning regular routine. And I've gotten to where I don't even think about it. I just go sit down in the recliner and I grab my computer and I pull it up and I do the devotional.
Awesome.
So it's just consistency, discipline, and even that can be accountability. Like I had about 6 other guys from the group I'm in who were doing this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we all did the same ones.
Okay.
And so that way we held each other accountable
You
too.
talk about it and like you had
And
some
you can talk about it. Yeah.
shared.
But you also don't want to get behind, because then you're like, well, I don't, I want to stay up with the group. So it gives you that camaraderie
Right.
too.
And I would say there's definitely something about like having an X, multiple X's in a row, like cross it out for the day. Like that's
Yeah.
powerful. I heard Jerry Seinfeld had a big chart for the year, and his goal was to write one joke a day, and he would draw an X when he did it. He's like, and it got so like after 100 days, he's like, I couldn't miss. He's like, I would come up with the dumbest joke because I didn't want to miss. I wrote a joke every day, and just
creating a visual for you is also very self-affirming and validating that, hey, I am making progress. Look at what I've done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it fuels you to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say definitely write your goals down, come up with a chart for yourself. That's like the U version Bible does that for you. It shows you the checks, and it also gives you a bar graph of how close you are to the end. So it kind of motivates you to keep going.
Gamifying the process.
Right.
That's awesome. Doug, is there anything else you'd like to tell the guys that are watching this? And also, I know you got a couple books out there.
Well, I have one book right now. It's called Childhood Trauma and the Non-Alpha Male. It's basically it's for a couple of different populations, for maybe boys that didn't grow up with a dad, boys who weren't close to their dad, maybe were abused by their dad, maybe their dad had an addiction and didn't spend much time with them. So it's for all kinds of boys who didn't have a strong male role model, and what was the process that they went through to find their own sense of masculinity.
Gotcha.
And then I am in the ending stages of a second book that has to do with sexual abuse of males that was perpetrated by males.
Gotcha.
And ultimately how it affected your sexual development and functioning as a male. So that's getting ready to go into the editing phase, and hopefully within the next year, my second book will be out.
Very exciting. And if guys wanted to get a hold of you, maybe they do need some counseling, they're local to the area.
Sure.
It's Insightful Counseling Services. Is that
Insight Counseling?
Insight
Counseling Services. The number is 248-923-2099.
And if that's not right, I will link the right one in the.
That is right. And my cell phone is 248-670-2861. You can text, call, Facebook message,
cool,
whatever.
And I will say this: I've talked to Doug about some issues with guys that I like, PTSD stuff, and he is. I want to help. Like I've never brought something to you and had you say, I'm pretty busy. You, to me, seem like someone who's doing this job because they want to help. Like that is.
It's definitely my ministry. I remember I first went to Bible school, and when I was there, I realized that's not really what I wanted to do. And I started praying about it, and that I wanted to go to school for psychology instead. And I really felt like the Lord spoke to me and said, help my people.
Right.
And so I knew that this was going to become my ministry, and it truly has.
That's awesome. And that definitely shows. It's been awesome. I do have something for the guys doing the challenge. We always try to do, earn some more points. So this weekly challenge, or until the end of July, will be if you can give up a minor addiction. So maybe that's caffeine or sweets for the day or something that you like, but maybe it's a little addicted for 2 days in a row, you can earn an additional 2 points to get you towards earning the title of husband, father, and leader. Doug, I appreciate it. This has been awesome. I think the guys are going to get a lot out of this, and I will talk to you guys later. See you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. That was awesome. Dr. Carpenter, thank you so much. What I really took away from that was that if you are struggling, if you are having a problem, trying to go it alone is almost a recipe for disaster. So if any of you are struggling with anything, I'm there. Dr. Carpenter's here. He gave us your personal cell phone number. I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. But please get help, whether it's your brother, your sister, your coworker, whatever it is, please reach out and get help. Thank you for watching this, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.